Okay, so we are live for another series of the Migrant Women Reality Watch. My name is Adriana. As you know, I'm the communications officer of the European Network of Migrant Women. But today I'm here in the capacity of Radical Girls, and so is Azura and Sodfa. Sodfa will come back shortly. But the Radical Girls, we're the young women's movement of the European Network of Migrant Women. So we share the same values and the same vision. It's just that we focus more on migrant young women and girls. So yeah, it's safe to say that today we're kind of taking over the Migrant Women Reality series. And yeah, we wanted to introduce the topic today. As you may have seen it in the flyer, it's racial injustice and discrimination from a global feminist perspective. And all of our live conversation is not really in the format of an interview. It will be more a live conversation between us three around the question on whose lives matter. And we're addressing this because of the whole George Floyd situation, his death, and the subsequent uprisings that happened in the US, but also at the European level after his death. And we are addressing this issue because we believe that anti-racist movements cannot be sustainable or stay in time if they don't encompass a feminist analysis. And this is the whole reason why we are here today. There is no way we can address racial injustice if we don't take this kind of approach. So this is why the Radical Girls decided, the three of us, to gather for this conversation. And we have here with us Azura and Sodfa. Azura is based in the UK and Sodfa is right now in Italy. And yes, maybe we can already start. I don't know if you girls want to add anything else about yourselves. It's good. Okay. So the first question is to you, Azura, and I wanted to ask you, how do you feel like you fit into the whole Black Lives Matters movement, both locally and globally?
Firstly, I think I'd like to say that I stand with Dr. Shola when she says that Black Lives Matter is a cultural revolution and it's about eradicating white supremacy. As an emerging young Black feminist, my perspective on Black Lives Matter comes from what I've seen, my personal experiences, and of a family-related police murder. What's been noticeable for me is the lack of feminism during these demonstrations, and that white feminism appears to have taken a backseat. At least I've yet to have seen white feminists on the demonstrations fighting and supporting with their banners about deaths in custody or in the police hands. The last demonstration I was on concerned Darren Cumberbatch. He was killed in Nuneaton, which is not far from where I live in the UK. Deaths in custody by the police within a criminal justice system. I think the disparity as how we as the black community are treated as opposed to of our white sisters and brothers reflects the racism within the UK society. And for me, it starts from school. I think it's well integrated in the education system. Our Black lives are distorted and undermined and are always denied. The systems thrive off that distortion. As a feminist, it's hard to separate from the fact that we as a Black community, my Black community is being systemically harmed. So never will I say that that there's no justice for my Black brothers. Of course, I'll always fight for the Black brothers, but I also believe that the dilemma's in radical feminism as well, and that radical feminism fails to take into consideration about the racism that's in society. Sorry. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that we have the right to live, and that we have the same right as everyone else. And sometimes I feel that intersectionality needs to be addressed within the feminist movement. And that as a Black feminist, I can't separate myself from my culture, my colour, my ethnic origins, my class, and so forth. And I think it's all synthesized into one oppression. But the feminist movement doesn't take this on board, and in fact, they departmentalize this. So therefore, aspects within the feminist movement can easily be hidden, and that's what's going on in the UK. I think this hasn't been said. I think I'm repeating what's been said since the 1980s by some of the leading Black academics and feminists. I think what I'm saying now is no different to what's been said 50 years ago. So it's as if we, as Black people, have to keep repeatedly explaining and educating our oppressors, trying to raise the issue of being Black feminist in the UK, even down to our postcodes, our home ownership, the name of our school. In many ways, we're stereotypes and ghettoized within our lives, and discrimination permeates through institutions, through housing, through health. The race stereotypes and racism continually impact on how our needs are met in the UK. And as I said before, I think that is white feminism, the appearance of white feminists with their banners supporting and fighting for us, the Black Lives Matter movement, lacks. Even if I look at social media platforms, if I look at Facebook, and if I look at any social media platform, suddenly feminists appear to have a sudden passion for Black Lives Matter. But a few weeks ago, prior to this, Black women were only shared in a post now and again, post. The racism wasn't always integrated within all the posts that we share. And I think it's us Black women and us ethnic minorities who continually educate others about oppressive practices, which deflects our energy from the struggle we're focused on. Perhaps it's just me. I feel that women share on media is just about being right on, rather than committing to tackling the race. As those posting those posts, very diverse friends, or support any diverse campaigns. These are the things that I feel that impact on me as a Black feminist, and as if in the feminist world I'm an appendage to the feminist movement, particularly in the UK. Of course, Black Lives Matter, but we're trying to work from the perspective that we have a fundamental right to life. People don't know, nor do my white sisters. In fact, I feel as if lynching has taken its own new form in the 20th century, and this should be addressed by everyone. It's not just about the police brutality, it's about the fact that our lives, our Black lives, are so disposable, so easily disposable. In fact, now in Britain, 150 towns have marched, and there's been a global response to the killing. But we have to ask the question is, why does the same response not occur with the raping and killing of us Black women? Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. I also remember in a conversation that we had previously that you mentioned that there's a lack of class analysis in relation to the whole Black Lives Matters movement, and I was wondering if you would like to address that today.
I slightly touched on that when the black people aren't really incorporated in the class structure in England. We're all put into one class. You can't compare our class to another white person's class because we're all put in a sort of the working class background. We're all put to live in a certain area. We're denied the same right to the jobs, the same opportunities for jobs as white people are. So in that sense, that's how we don't fit into the class structure. And if socialism and feminism automatically includes the class structure, how do we as Black people fit into structure?
Okay, thank you so much. Now that Sodfa is back, I also have some questions for her. Sodfa will be speaking from a North African perspective. But the first question would be, first and foremost, what is your perspective on the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and how do you think you fit into it, if you fit?
Thank you so much, Adriana, and my apologies for going back and disappearing. I had an unexpected circumstance to deal with. So I join everything that Azura has said. Thank you so much for bringing your perspective. You know, I've been in the youth space, but most importantly in the Black African youth space. And one of the first things I learned is we don't need anyone to speak on our behalf. And that was the reason why I didn't post any Black picture. I didn't start to speak about anything because I have never faced any racial discrimination. I come from a continent, my region is North Africa, which is absolutely racist against Black people. We have always felt this need of identifying as Arab rather than African. And therefore coming with these amazing young people, Black young people who are very able to speak for themselves, I didn't feel the urgency to go on social media or to post or to say that Black Lives Matter because we know it. As feminists, and as Azura was saying, we know it. And that's why we are very vocal when we speak about pornography and the class and race and how women are discriminated. And we know it when we, as migrant, refugee, IDP, and for all the women we advocate for, we know it very well who are the victims of human trafficking, sexual exploitation, who are the excluded, who are the silenced. So I didn't felt this urgency to go with the mass in 1 week, an uprising that has started from the United States. Are we devaluing the death of George Floyd? Absolutely not. Are we calling for people to be more inclusive and to understand that racism against Black people exists? It has been more than 300 years? Yes. So that's the stance that personally I have. It's not something new. It's not something that started 1 week ago. I feel actually quite surprised that now people are outraged. But what about all the Black people who have died in the Mediterranean? What about all the Black people who die every day in the African continent? What about all the white European, older white European coming the African continent and exploiting and buying the young African, Black young Africans of 14, 16? Why is that different? So should we say that this movement is a classist movement? I don't think so. And the reason why I don't think so is because movements are made of people. And we are the people. And we should be the one defining how do we want this movement. And should be Black African women explaining very well that they wanted this movement to be feminist. So this is my perspective starting on how was my reaction about the Black Lives Matter. I mean, I see African people, especially in the continent, standing every day for their rights against this new form of colonialism, which is an economical one, but also seeing the various forms of discrimination coming from North Africa, but also in dealing We know this language of migrant versus expats, and why should I justify myself to take a trip in Europe? Do you want to steal our jobs? You are not enough to attend a conference, and so back and so forth. So this is my perspective on what has happened. But can I also comment that this is amazing to see an uprising of people? If from the one side is amazing because you can finally see the power of the people when they come together. From the other side, I'm wondering, why don't we get outraged for other things that happen every day? A woman in South Africa, pregnant, 8 months, has been killed, her body hanged on the tree in the middle of the street. Does her life doesn't matter, or the life of all Black women killed every day, the life of women killed every day? That's what I'm wondering, is like, why do we select our fights as humans, but first of all as women, as we know that we are marginalized and we are excluded? Why do we think that one fight is more worth than another? If we could just come together and stand against an oppressive regime and oppressive ideology that we are seeing in the past days in social media being targeted, even when women speak about their sexual abuse, they are targeted. So that's how I think we should see the Black Lives Matter. How can we, and especially Black African women, own this movement and make sure that this movement becomes a feminist movement? And most importantly, becomes a feminist movement in the way we feel and see feminism is, and not influenced by any toxic narrative and ideology which actually harms women. So this is my response. Adriana, I think I spoke a lot, but...
No, it's great. Connecting to that, I think what we really need to integrate is a global feminist perspective. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think, I mean, besides all the valid explanations that you just gave us, but also for other people who are listening in, what is really the key to leading or to be in such a movement, and why is it so important for us women?
I think we are lucky. In the past decade, we have seen the Tunisian revolution, the Egypt one, although is failing, the Algerian Iraq. So we have several examples of people rising and using the internet to connect, share information, build movements. And we are on the right time, which is the time of using the internet and technology to connect and to make sure that we get to know what happens to women around the world and organize to be a global movement. I feel that as a feminist movement, we are a little bit failing into this. I don't know about all of you, but can I say myself, I don't know enough about what is happening in women in Latin America. I don't know what is happening in women in Southern Asia. I don't, and it's wrong. Because maybe this is the time to get an idea how we know it already, but we need more stories to explain that women are oppressed, are killed, are raped, and they face every form of violence every day, no matter from which corner of the world they come from. We are targeted because we are women. And I think that if we rise together and we come together with our common values and goal, we can definitely do this. I mean, we are seeing it now. I'm sorry if I get back because we are speaking about Black Lives Matter, but we have seen what is happening in social media in these past 2 days. We are seeing a mass of people going and accusing a woman and saying that a woman socially excluded is blah, blah, blah. We know it very well that this is not like, it's crazy, but I'm referring to, just to make a name, yes, it's J.K. Rowling. It's not like I'm hiding the name. And all the massive aggression and violence she's facing. Now, these people are organizing on social media to demoralize, humiliate, and attack a woman. Now, knowing that we are superior and we don't feel the necessity to create an army to attack people, but we can create an army to connect with women and use the good of the social media to stand with other women when they do their fights. I think this is possible. We have seen it in countries like Tunisia. They connected the south and the north of the country through blogging. We have such a power. I think it's the time that we move beyond our borders and we really feel and think about the potential of building a global movement. I don't see and I don't feel limitation at this point.
Thank you, Sodfa. Even though I'm here more as a moderator, I'm also here to have a conversation with you women. And I wanted to build on the word border, because for me, even though I have never felt any kind of racial discrimination, for me, what was really disappointing in the whole social organizing, especially at the youth movements here in Europe, is that Black Lives Matter. Yes, there is absolutely no doubt about that. But the Black lives that are crossing borders to have asylum, for example, here in Europe, do they matter? As you were saying before, does it matter that the Mediterranean is a graveyard for Black people right now? Just today, 12 people died. 12 Black people died capsized in a boat in the coast of Tunisia. But nobody is having anything to do about it, because it's normal for Black migrants to cross the Mediterranean and die in European shores or African shores, right? And also building on what you were saying before, is I cannot believe the hypocrisy of just putting a black square from your home, demanding visibility for Black lives while you put a black square, which is totally misses the point for me. But at the same time, or at least from a European perspective, European men being the first consumers in pornography of Black and Indigenous women and ethnic minority women. Just this week on social media, we could see some screenshots of some videos that Pornhub has, for example, and the titles are so inherently racist, yet nobody bats an eye, because the Black lives exploited in the sex trade and the sex industry simply don't matter, or simply do not reach headlines, because it's normal. And the women from Nigeria that are trafficked into Italy daily, those don't matter as well. So for me, that was mainly the focus of my criticism, was my thoughts these days, is that we are selective about which Black lives matter, and especially if these Black lives belong to women, to women's bodies, to women's personas. And I think now we're kind of getting close to the end, but I really wanted to take the opportunity to say a few names of Black women that have died recently and that have not reached the headlines. I really wish that we would say Breonna Taylor's name. It's been 2 weeks she's dead. She was killed in her own home. And still, I didn't see much on that side besides initiatives from her family and friends. I want to say Uwa's name. Uwa was killed in Nigeria also 2 weeks ago. She was raped and killed inside a church while she was studying. Nobody said her name. Literally, we had to. It's because of women's networks that we are able to say their names. Because women, we know where we're coming from, and we know that this oppression is not limited to any part of the globe. Is just due to our sex, or that we are women as a class. I want to say Marielle Franco's name. A lesbian politician that was killed in Rio a couple of years ago with multiple shots to the head. Nobody says her name. I mean, a lot of people say her name, but not as I would have expected. I want to say Samira Adamu's name. She was a Nigerian woman that was killed here in Belgium, suffocated by the police while she was being deported with a pillow on her head. Unfortunately, I could say so many names, but I really think it's important that the way that we build this movement is that we keep saying their names, because even though all Black lives matter, all the lives of the people killed at the hands of police brutality, this police brutality is not it's not a solo incident, let's say. We have to connect police brutality to class structure, like you were saying, Sodfa and Azura. We have to connect it to the system that permits this police branch to make use of this kind of force on Black people and ethnic minorities. So I think it's very important for us feminists, and especially young feminists, to pave the way for that, to pave the way for a global feminist perspective, and hopefully a global feminist movement. I'm seeing here on the comments that the viewers are seeing that they also want us to say their name of this South African woman that you said, Sodfa, before, that was hung from a tree. you're muted, but yeah. So yeah, unfortunately we cannot take any questions from the viewers, which is a pity because I think questions would be nice. But yeah, I was wondering if you had any last words before we leave it at this. I know it's short, but it's kind of the format of the series.
I just feel that this conversation is really important. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you, Anna. And thank you, the network, for organizing this weekly meeting. And I really hope this inspires to have a constant conversation about this and not just one episode.
Yes, we should definitely launch that from Radical Girls. That's a good start. I wanted to thank you both from joining us. Thank you, Azura, for sharing your experience and your perspective as a Black woman in the UK, and thank you, Sodfa, from joining in. I feel like the North African perspective is much missed sometimes in feminist debates as well. So I think it's great that we can incorporate that into the conversation.
Thank you, Adriana, for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.